Present.
I'm here. Here. Here.
Yes, ma'am.
Here.
Okay. And at this point, if we could ask Pastor Gail Tabor from Salt Inclusive UMC to come forth and lead us in the invocation, please. Pastor Tabor.
Is there a microphone for her to talk to?
Thank you. Let's pray, y'all. Holy One, today as we gather to do the work of providing for the education of all children in New Hanover County, we pause to remember to be grateful. We give thanks for the absolute joy of living in this beautiful place and for the beauty of your creation and our mandate to care for all that you have created, including each child just as they were made. We pray for the teachers and the students who have already begun their school year and for those who are anticipating their start. Give the students the calm they need to be open to learning and to impart wisdom and knowledge to the teachers as they use their abilities to teach. We pray for the safety of all students and teachers throughout this school year. Guide us as we face times of uncertainty and fear, that our choices and our vision will be ever toward all, and especially to those who are the most vulnerable among us. May the decisions be made here today be not exclusive or exclusionary, but be inclusive of all of our children and all of our teachers. Even when we have differences of opinion, give us the unity of spirit and help us to listen to others as they share their point of view. Aid this work today, that we be a unified team and that this board be a unified team as they lead New Hanover County Schools, that no child would ever feel their wrath or be inflicted with unnecessary pain. Help those in this room to hear one another and to act for the good of all of our students and all of our teachers and all of the staff. In our ever-changing world, we pray for these board members and for the various levels of officials and staff who serve. Bless this body and all the decisions that they make, that it would be of benefit to all who attend or who have a child or who care for someone who attends New Hanover County Schools. In all the names of the one we call holy, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. At this point, I've asked Ms. Walker to lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this point, thank you. We have, Ms. Bradford, you have a quick announcement?
I want to remind all parents, we have the 4 C's starting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And if you don't know what that is, it's collaboration, communication, coffee, talking about curriculum. It's at Rolling Grice from 8 to 10. Going to repeat it at Ogden Elementary from 12:30 to 2:30. Murray Middle starts at 5:30. And the school that turns out the most parents is going to get a fabulous catered lunch at their school. So you want to get people to come out and get involved in our curriculum. Rolling Grice, 8 o'clock, Ogden Elementary, 12:30, Murray, 5:30.
At this point, I'll entertain a motion for, first of all, I want to tell everybody I'm super excited about the town hall tonight. I think it's going to be a great time of discussion. So, and I want to thank everyone for being here today. And I know I'm talking way too long already. So at this point, I would like to get a approval of the agenda. Would someone like to make that motion?
Second.
Okay, we got first and second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 7-0. We're going to turn it over to our new communications director, Mr. Cardella, and he will continue on from this point. Thank you again for being here.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Sal Cardella. I'm the new Hanover County Schools Chief Communications Officer. And on behalf of the new Hanover County School Board, welcome and thank you for your interest in tonight's roundtable discussions on the district's strategic plan. You are here tonight because the Board of Education cares about your ideas and your concerns, and they want to hear from you. The roundtable format will give you the opportunity to provide feedback about a specific goal from our current strategic plan. Of more than 150 stakeholders who signed up to take part in tonight's discussion, 60 were randomly selected to participate. Those 60 have been placed in 6 separate groups of 10, one per strategic goal. To facilitate the best possible dialogue and to make sure our community feel heard, we hold 2 back-to-back sessions tonight. The first group of 30 will talk about strategic goals 2, 3, and 6, which are 2 is student safety, 3, supportive teacher and staff environment, and 6, community partnerships. The second session will cover goals 1, 4, and 5, which are academic performance, number 4, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and 5, family engagement. During the sign-up process, the board asked you to rank the strategic goals according to your interest, and they've done their best to place you at a table that aligns in what you care about most. Though we hope you understand that wasn't always possible. Please know that regardless of where you're seated, your presence and your input are incredibly important to us. For the duration of the session, you will stay at your assigned table. Our board members will rotate from table to table every 15 minutes to ensure you have the chance to speak with all of them. The 15-minute time limit will be made visible on the screens here. The discussions at each table will be recorded, and those recordings will be made available on the NHCS YouTube channel. This event is also being live streamed, though only one discussion will be featured during each session. Again, all discussions will be available on the YouTube channel. Please note that board members will not be at liberty to discuss or comment on anything associated with the book Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, as it is still under review. You are welcome to email board members directly if you would like to share your opinion on that particular issue or attend the board hearing that will take place on September 1st at 9 a.m. The hearing will also be live streamed. Remember, this is a dialogue format and to be respectful to everyone. Please check the list on the screen if you haven't already to ensure that you are at the assigned table and place your phones on silent. Okay, so as far as the empty chairs, anybody that isn't here yet, those chairs will remain empty. Don't forget to place your phones on silent, and as soon as we're ready, we can begin the clock.
Here because they know a lot. And I would like to start the conversation out with just talking about what's working. You know, our topic in this table is safety and wellness. But what's working, what's not? You know, let's start with a kind of a plus delta idea, and we can go. Ms. Farnham is going to be taking notes, unless one of the board members would rather start somewhere else. Yes,
I
Ms.
was going to
Crable.
suggest that we just kind of go around the table and let
do it.
each person get, at least try and get one question in.
Okay.
Because we only got 10 minutes, and that means you got a minute and a half. You know, so we want to make sure that everybody gets heard, so that's kind of what I was thinking.
Let's start with
But
the
just
major.
tossing that out.
Hi, I'm Gail Major. I haven't caught you two yet. Your name?
Tim Merritt.
Tim?
Linda Higgins.
Linda. I thought I recognized you, Linda and Tim. My question, when I hear student safety, it's holistically. how are the children safe. So with my short amount of time, I will talk about two things that I had brought to the board's attention 2 years ago. Oh, North Carolina is one of 7 states that does not have legal fingerprint. So there's, and most people don't know that, even people in North Carolina. So that's been something we've been working on, and there's quite a few of us trying to bring it to the state for legislation, which it probably needs. But at the same time, there are counties that already have it. It's in the human resources, so when you're hired. I understand that we have new hires, but but what we don't have is everyone. That includes even contractors. Anybody that works here has to be fingerprinted. The other one is, as we look at the safety in the schools, so what do you have in place? And a general one is busing. If you don't have enough help, right, are the children staying safe? Hallway monitors, who do we have? So I'll leave it at that past my time. So
Is there
hopefully that's
a
something.
question that you want to ask about either of those? So we can
The question is,
try and answer it?
the fingerprinting has been brought up to a lot of government officials in New Hanover County, including the sheriff, right? So my question is, has anybody come to the table to try to implement it? I mean, we knew it, we tried it, right, Stephanie Walker? We tried it, and that was that meeting that got shut down, and then it just kind of went away. We probably have immigrants coming in, so understanding that it probably will have to meet the standard of national fingerprinting. So if we're going to do it, we might as well do it right.
I know for a fact that we do, as you said, we do new hires. Every new hire has to go through the fingerprints. And that wasn't in place for forever, so we've done that,
Well, I would just say that was a result of us getting it on the agenda, and it did happen. Because I know people were concerned about kind of what had gone on in our district, and that's valid. I mean, we've been through a lot. At the same time, I think what we also talked about was that we do thorough background checks. We check the registry, the what's it called? You know what I'm talking about.
The sex offender
Thank you very much. And I think we addressed that at one of our meetings. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if any of the staff remember that, but I feel like we did.
I just wanted to add that I know that our, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but that Dr. Barnes has told us that they are evaluating it. It's quite expensive to do that. And it's only as good as the system. If a person hasn't been caught doing anything wrong or bad and convicted, not even just caught and accused, but caught and convicted, then a fingerprint isn't going to show that up. So that's what I think that we are just kind of in hold. That's what my impression was, because it wasn't in our budget to do every employee in the county. We made it a call on some hardware things and some other safety measures prior to doing that.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
I think we got time, don't we?
Yeah.
We can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my concerns are around bullying and around sexual predators that are in the schools. And I think that goes to fingerprinting and doing all that we can to eliminate sexual predators that are coming through the cracks. So my question is, how are we addressing bullying, especially related to our LGBTQIA students and those who are the most vulnerable? So how are we addressing that in schools, and how are we ensuring that we are actually acting on that? And I get you can send a kid to the principal or you can whatever, but a pat on the back and a do better is not getting it done. And so how are we actually going to address, what policies are we going to put in place that really actively address bullying?
Julie, do you want to talk about, because you know about the bullying policy?
Yeah, so,
Have you guys interviewed? Yes, have you guys interviewed? Do you?
yeah, I think we went around to everybody,
Okay,
yeah.
I just didn't.
Yep, Julie Gordon. So one of the things that we've done, so our bullying policy's been in place, but bullying and discrimination and harassment of protected classes or protected groups of individuals, we need to kind of hold that up a little bit differently than just generalized social bullying and kind of antisocial peer relations. So in some ways, teaching social competencies, teaching empathy, compassion, not teaching kids how to believe about things, but teaching that, we all show up as we are, right?
Acceptance.
Acceptance and like way beyond tolerance, absolute acceptance. And one thing that we've seen, and it's kind of been post-pandemic, you know, after folks were separated for a while and then coming back together, we saw more fights, we saw more peer conflict, we saw more polarization of feelings and beliefs and really acting on those. So one thing we realized that we needed to do in the past year, while we have a bullying investigation protocol, part of it is able to be done at the school level with those staff that work with the students, the ones that teach them, observe them, the administrators that end up handling those situations, the social worker, the counselor. But then if it's substantiated at the school level, it now comes to a district level person. And actually it's Glenn Locklear, who's our director of student safety, that's out there that's in charge of that process now. And we recreated the bullying investigation protocol to make it more of a standard operating procedure, so that it's step one, ensure you do this, step one, step two, step three. And then beyond that, making sure that we can have some restorative practices going on, conversations that lead to changing of thoughts on really kind of teasing people out, but then also ensuring that we have safety contracts and stay away agreements, and that those are considered, and if it's to a certain level, offering school assignment change, and then for some of those that are so detrimental, offering other services to go along with that. So it's very multi-layered, but part of it has to be done at the school level, and then it builds up. And I'd be happy to share any of that with you if you're interested.
And I'd like to add in too, we do have the Ethics 360 policy where those kind of things can be reported by a person, by the student who's being bullied, by a parent of a student that's being bullied, or by a parent of a friend of a student, or a teacher. There's multiple ways of getting that into the system with that. We've also completely upped the game on bubbling up to the top people that are behaving less than appropriately, and they are investigated thoroughly immediately, and a lot of teachers are put on administrative leave while we investigate. It's not like, let's go on back to the class while we figure this out. So much more of an aggressive approach to that. And then also too, I just lost my train of thought. We did, as part of the Title IX committee, we did a survey of our middle school and high school students to find out how they felt it was being handled in their schools. And we got a lot of good data from that, handed it over to, Julie's department and to Jarrell Lewis, our Title IX department. Now we have an interim there, but so we have gotten to the stakeholders, the kids, where they feel safe. We have all the programs that she said. So it's a multi-pronged approach.
And just real quick,
Yeah,
we're running out of
sorry.
time, but just real quickly, if you don't get your question in this time, you'll have 2 more rotations. So you may not have us, but you'll have 2 more rotations.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Still have Julie.
Yeah.
And first of all, just ask each of you to speak up, as I'm a bit hard of hearing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
My name is Dr. Tim Merrick. My concern is around the stated number of suspensions, both in and out of school, and the disproportionate number of those suspensions within children of color and other different groups. It seems like, I love what I'm hearing, I love what you're saying is bubbling up to the surface, you're taking things more seriously, but it seems like it's not necessarily proportionately being divided. It seems like we're cutting staff in certain ways, assistant principals and other things where if we don't have the staff to deal with this, what does a teacher do? We teach acceptance, we teach this, but when things happen, now what do? I've heard that we're still doing isolation, and I'm here to talk because I'm a retired psychophysiologist and functional neurologist, and what stress and trauma do to a child to prevent learning, to create an inwardly facing anger that comes out later. We have to be in the prevention business. So I'm concerned about the isolation. The question I'm asking is, what are we doing with these problem kids? How are we making it more equitable? And how are we managing this in a learning situation rather than a punitive one?
I would just say, I'm working with Julie a lot. Julie did bring us a very outstanding presentation probably 2 meetings ago about disproportionality. I had talked about that a couple of years ago. It's clear, the data is very clear on the disproportionality problem that we have in our district. And I think with the task force that we are working on together, one of the subcommittees is the mental health task force, and we're looking at behaviors too. And we're looking at ways that we can address that through trauma-informed. We got a lot of feedback from principals this last meeting that we had, Ms. Craig was there too, but also you've gotten feedback in a different occasion about what principals need, because each school is a little different and the population's different. And so I think if we move towards maybe trauma-informed, Julie, you can speak.
Yeah. Do you want me to jump? Okay. So I love your questions. Thank you. So definitely in trauma-informed teaching for not just teams of staff at the school, but for whole staff. That's one of our biggest barriers, is having the time with our staff. We have so many things to train them on, and then the majority of the time they're face-to-face with kids. So the amount of time we have to give them professional development is always a battle. Like, we start doing tug of war. No, I need them this amount of time. No, I do. And so trauma-informed teaching and trauma-informed schools, how do we have a more instructive approach to addressing challenging behaviors? Because discipline is really just the theoretical approach, but addressing challenging behaviors has got to start with setting the classroom up for success. And there's an evidence-based model for that, STOIC. STOIC really stands for like the structure and the teaching and observing and interacting and
Engaging.
Well, there's a C one. Anyway, but it's all about that. But and so it's really about ensuring that we not only prevent challenging behaviors, but we know how to address them because we understand the root cause. And so one of the things that we talk about is having more behavior specialists. We have instructional coaches. We need behavior coaches to support our teachers, especially with the challenging behaviors we see now. It's very different. This is my 26th year in education and my undergrad degree. Mr. Wilborn knows this. It's behavior disorders, and so it's absolutely my passion as I moved into administration.
I'll be honest, she kept me out of a lot of trouble.
Well, thank you.
Wonderful.
We go way back
Yeah.
into a different district. But having a behavior support continuum from all students to some students to the few students that really require that tertiary level triage support while we address trauma and build that into the classroom function is so much of what we have to do. The disproportionality, our kids of, not just kids of color, but African American students are almost 6 times more likely to be suspended. And we've examined that those are more subjective behaviors. We have to address any bias that we might own, implicit or explicit.
Invisible disabilities.
Right, and it's 4.5 times for disability. So we have a huge effort to address this. And we're looking for all resources and all input. But I know, Ms. Walker has seen a lot of my plans for how we roll it out. We have some barriers, but we're on it.
We have 1 minute left.
Trying to talk fast.
Okay.
Sorry.
Like I say, if you need half this time and half next time too.
So
To me, when we say safety and wellness, it's really everything that sets the stage for being able to have a good teaching setting. That this is your stage. This is your setting of the stage. And the problem I see is that
45 seconds remaining.
keep being
45
reactive
seconds
instead
remaining.
of proactive. That the stage needs to be set proactively. We need to make sure we have the counselors. Counselors have to come before having police in the school. In other words, we want to be proactive, not reactive.
Absolutely.
And just upping SROs and scaring kids with big dogs. I mean, I have a big dog. And I live on Manly, so I live in the neighborhood, okay? And I can tell you that if I take my dog outside, every child on my street runs, okay? So what is that
Thank
setting
you all. That
in
is
terms of
15
being
minutes.
able to learn?
15-minute time
If
limit
when you
is up.
come into the school, you see a big dog and you're scared of dogs. I mean, it's those things are reactive.
So I wanted to just jump in on that. Those are all very good points. We are trying to use our SROs not in a policing. Look, we're not trying. We don't use our police as policers. We use them as another relationship builder, knowing that that's not always the case for some children. But one thing too that our board has talked about and is doing more training for ourselves on understanding resiliency, ACEs in the community, all the different things that children are facing, so that we can put the right resources towards that. So it's not only what she does, but what we need to know more about.
So Julie or Eddie can both talk about this. Thank you. Okay, just to finish your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, this is gonna be like Groundhog Day.
I know.
Different people.
Lightning round.
We're gonna do this all over again.
Here we are.
Let's see if they notice.
Well, I just try to write down 5 things, so I need to come
Okay.
back to them.
Julie's writing it all down.
I'm trying. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I got a lot typed. Except when I was talking and I looked at Eddie and said I didn't write anything down.
I started to take notes on that, and I was like, you got it. You know what you said.
No, she doesn't.
She does.
I did add some stuff in. Talking about suspension disproportionality. Yes.
I was just kind of summarizing. I just kind of summarized a couple of things.
Oh, of course it is.
Okay, good.
Because I know there's ones we're still on.
So that was group 1. Do I need to frame them?
That was good.
By group?
I was at the administration building.
We will now begin our next round of 15 minutes.
So ask the same questions of us, is that what we're saying?
I think I'm asking whatever they want.
Or you can go to your next round.
Randy, stop with Randy. Randy,
We have a
Randy.
match 20 minutes.
And next to you, do you know, I'm just trying to get names. Next to you,
Apologies, hi.
That's okay, I'm
Christine
Gail.
Diane.
Christine, okay.
Yes, and when you speak, if you'll say your name before you speak, just so it'll record it. Because people may not listen to every session or whatever, so that would be really helpful.
And if everyone could speak up, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
I gotta be out here, do it.
Yeah.
What?
It's the acoustics.
What do you say?
So is it my turn?
It is.
Okay. My name's Randy Chenoweth. I'm a community member. And you brought up what area that I was interested in, hearing how it's been going with y'all, the Port City United initiative, which is very expensive. So, so it's a great possibility. But how is it working in the schools? Like they're providing one of their initiatives is the SRO officers, correct?
No. Not Port City United. We do have SROs, but not through Port City United.
Well, they've been funded with millions of dollars to provide that. Yeah.
Do you want me to explain what they provide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Don't let me get between you.
No.
Yeah, I would look to her, I think I know, so we'll see. I can compare my notes and see if I'm up to speed.
So Port City United is funded through our county to provide 3 different arms of services. One would be like a call center that they provide. That another one is where they have community interveners. We don't have really a lot of access with either of those. And the other one is community resource specialists or community resource coordinators, CRCs. And those CRCs, we love an acronym.
Yeah, on their website, it's SRO.
Oh, okay. So the CRCs, the community resource coordinators, are in our schools, in certain targeted schools, and it's based on community demographic data, criminal involvement data, community violence data, and they really are there to work alongside our school social workers, school counselors, administrators on connecting families to the resources to address kind of the root cause of some of the issues that they're facing. So they work very closely with kind of building relationships with families because, they are individuals in the community, or the CRCs, and they the goal is that they can have a relationship with families that maybe a school social worker won't be able to have, and they'll help build that that trust level and connect them to resources they need to address root cause issues.
Like, do you have any scenarios or stories that you could share?
Yeah. So again, they started after the school year started last year, so we've done a little bit of fine tuning. So they were getting a lot of referrals for services that we already provide. So some of it was like, we don't have enough groceries, or we need help paying a bill, or things like that. We're like, okay, well, let's connect you to those things. What we also want to use this for, what it was funded for, is to interrupt violence in the community that spills over into the school community. Because community violence that pours into the schoolhouse becomes school violence. So we want to make sure that we have that perimeter set with resources and support. So we have worked with them. They have been wonderful and gracious to work with us after some great discussions, and helping them understand what referrals they need to be receiving. That it doesn't just come from any teacher that says, hey, this kid's got something going on in their life. It needs to go to the community, the CRC. No, come through the school social worker and the school counselor and administration, and let us make sure we rule everything else out. And then if this belongs to Port City United, let's make sure we tie the family with them. So making sure that we're not stepping over other services that should be in place with maybe more training and more knowledge, but really giving them the ones that they're supposed to be seeing. And so we're looking, our referrals changed to not just any challenging behavior that they might see to be referred, but especially those kids that engage in certain types of behaviors that are predictive. Again, we're trying to prevent these behaviors, knowing from an evidence base what is predictive of more fading out, tuning out, dropping out, but also challenging. So we know that certain things happen before a kid engages in challenging behavior. They're tuning out, they're not listening to redirection, they're not bonding, they're not building relationships, they have antisocial peer networks, all these different things. When we identify those are the referrals we want you involved in. We don't want to wait until this kid brings a gun and then we're like, why weren't you serving that kid? So that's specifically what they do.
Now, one of the things that I learned in looking at Port City United is they funded 3 nonprofits at the same time. And one of them was Communities and Schools, and the other one was Voyage, and the third one was Link. So that's where they put their money. And Communities and Schools does a similar to what she just described. We just had, there's a task force operating right now looking at the low performance schools. And they just had a meeting, and of the 11 principals that were here, I heard 2 of them mention Communities and Schools doing a good job. And then I also, I think I may have heard more, but I heard 2 speak about Port City United, that those people were working in their schools. So 2 out of 11 is not a bad report. That's not scientific data, but I took note of that because I hadn't heard anybody say anything positive about Port City United up to that point. We've had some meetings and we've had some discussions and so on. So, I mean, if they're making a difference in just one kid's life, sometimes that's all it really, just, if we can change one kid, if we can turn that particular highly at-risk kid around, then it's worth everything.
So are they placed throughout the school buildings?
So they mainly attach themselves to the student support staff that are there. And then we, because we really like the logic model or some kind of organization so that we don't waste efforts. Aligning the work of every single type of staff member in the building. So this is what the school social worker does, school counselor, school nurse. Now we have this CRC from Port City United, either their Communities and Schools or their Link or whatever. And this is how all of our work aligns, but also is different. And so they are assigned in the schools. Originally, the county assigned them only to schools within a certain catchment area, demographic or geographically. And we said, well, actually, we have students that live in the geographic area that go to school, such as kids that live right here go to Myrtle Grove, or, Creekwood is kind of split. Creekwood goes to Holly Shelter. And so we said that doesn't necessarily work. We need to help move those around. Let us help you know where the people need to be. And they've been very responsive.
You had a question?
I'm concerned that we skipped over Christine because she wasn't here, and I want to make sure you had a chance.
I would be with you. I wanted to make sure he was done.
So Christine, do you have a question?
I do.
Go ahead and say your full name.
And I apologize, Christine Tobias. I was very late because I was at the administrative building. Unfortunately, zero address in any of the communications that came to us. So there's that. But I have a child, and I apologize, I don't know what's already been discussed. So if it's already been discussed, can you just give me the buzzer? I have a child in New Hanover, and I have a child in Hubbard. So obviously I have an interesting perspective of the disparities between the two schools. So I was PTA president for Myrtle Grove Middle when my children were there. So I've been heavily involved. I think, I'm now joining the new PTO at New Hanover to get more deeply involved. And I think a lot of the wellness and safety comes from the disparity in the facilities, right? I think it's hard to feel a sense of pride, a sense of connection, a sense of community for those kids when they're at that school. It's hard. The cafeteria. So my question is, I know that there's budgets, there's funding, it's just hard to know how it's going to be addressed to get New Hanover's facilities up to where they need to be.
Again, when everybody tells me the name, I know a few, but I've emailed and things, but I said this thing last table. Budget creates or takes away everything. Everything. When we had ESSER funds, I won't make this brief because I won't take up time. We had ESSER funds, we had like $90 million.
Yep.
We hired more staff, obviously to deal with COVID, because the whole thing was it had to help with the COVID, whatever COVID negativity, anything in the school was negative because of COVID. So we could hire staff, we could hire more accountants, we could hire everything. Then those monies, this is the lab, are dissipated, they've gone. So now we got back to reality. We're waiting on our budget to be approved by the county commissioners. School opens in a few days, we haven't heard that yet. Of course, they've got to balance with everything else, I understand that. We've got this tremendous fund that people are starting to talk about, zillions of dollars, hopefully.
That's the endowment fund?
The endowment, it's somewhere in there. I think the application process is something being discussed.
It starts September 1st, it runs
Right,
about 3
and
weeks.
so we'll start getting little tidbits about how that's going to work as well. But budget drives everything. To answer your question, my daughter went to Hanover. My wife graduated from Hanover, although I was supposed to hire her. We need to tear that school totally down. Whatever the community wants, leave it so it reflects New Hanover and build it back. If that's the disparity I hear you saying, and you're right. It makes all the difference in the world. It makes a difference to the staff, to the students, and parents. And you're right. I wish I could disagree with you, but you're absolutely target right on. Until we have a budget, we went in, I say we because we approve it, but 99% of what we get from those who know what they're doing, like Mr. Anderson's in charge of all the maintenance. So when the gym floor took over, well, he does. He responds. Bless his heart. He had to tear out the whole floor, and the deeper you got, the more you had to replace it. Finally, he had to go down below the sand and replace all the pipes that were how many years old. But so we don't have a budget. We need a bond. I'll say it out loud.
I was gonna say, we need a
somebody
bond.
to start asking for
And you're
a
looking
bond
at
to do
a
these
10-year
things.
process probably.
Because I'll be dead by the time they start building.
Right. Yeah.
Or not know who I am. And so
It's
but
not
we
like we're
just-
not thinking about it.
we've got to start now talking about it
We are.
and reflecting that in what we're doing. So bond referendum, even though it's going to be 5 years away.
In a bond referendum, means your taxes are gonna have to go up. So we have to have the bond referendum, everybody has to vote to raise the taxes for this specific purpose. Now, a couple months back, maybe 4, I said, hey, it's perfect time, because we have this giant building downtown, and there's all this discussion about it, and we can move all of our kids from New Hanover into there, let the city buy it, and then let us use it for a school, and then we could leave the facade of New Hanover, because that's a really strong alumni, and, tear out the back end of it and rebuild it. But the city wanted it for their building. We don't have land for it. The first thing to do is to buy the land, and we don't have it. And then the whole logistics of it. So it's not gonna help your family, is what I'm trying
Right,
to say.
but I think you said there's a strong alumni, right? And I think there's a lot of people who, if given the right call to action and, all of the things
They
that
need
it
to raise it
requires.
up.
Yeah, I couldn't get
Like I
any
say,
buy-in with
they
the
need-
county
they need to
commissioners.
raise it
I
up.
raised that to at least 4 of them, and they were like, yeah, nice idea, Pat, and just turned it
Did
away.
they go to New Hanover? Did their kids go?
So what y'all need to do is talk to send your county commissioners emails and say, hey, when are you gonna build this? And what are we gonna do about New Hanover? What are you gonna do about New Hanover? And just keep nagging them, because we'll be nagging them.
And
Trust us,
to
we're
add
nagging
to
them.
that, unfortunately, anything in the circle, in the heart of Wilmington, New Hanover there's no growth in Hanover. There's no empty land to build apartments like you see on River Road. Anything south on Monkey Junction, anything from Wilmington to Pinley County, anything north. You look at Porter's Neck, Ogden, they are absolutely, I think Porter's Neck's over 300 kids, almost, what is it?
It's definitely over. I think it's maybe 200 this year.
200 kids, we ordered 4 trailers, have to wait a whole year to get them. And so people are moving into the developments, and therefore they're exploding. We don't own a piece of land to build a school on. They can't, I don't want to be specific. The powers to be have not ever said to a builder who's developing 500 acres like they do,
Yes.
oh, by the way, you
gotta
need to
build
donate
size.
35 acres for a school.
And build a school.
But River Lights gave us, I think it's, how many acres?
10 acres.
Was it just 10? They gave us 10 acres, unsolicited, maybe?
And we have a plan, but we had to stop
But we got to build a school
1 minute
there.
warning. You
So
have a
as
1
you
minute
look at
warning.
Redoing Hanover, you need to get on it. So it's in that list of whatever priorities. Because we're going to have to build new schools or add on. And if we don't have land, we go up or we go out.
And that is the commissioners. I've gone before them. You can go to a meeting and sign up and give a talk 3 minutes. You never, there's no one's ever there.
True.
So to hear from parents, and myself as a child advocate, we need you guys. We don't hear from much,
But that's a
So,
long-range thing,
bring
so
in,
if you got them to say yes today, we'd still probably be at the minimum of like 8 years. So we need to really put some pressure out there. And again, I brought it up. I had a really great plan, I thought, but, because we had a building we could move the kids into for the start of the school year. But,
I heard you were being more active in the PTO at New Hanover. There's a group of parents that have formed advocates, and they're specifically looking.
Thank you all. This
They're
concludes
specifically
the
looking
second This concludes
very
the second
closely
round.
with Casey.
Board members, please move to the
Cassie,
next table.
To do a lot of work out there.
Table 1,
Some
we'll
of
move to
which you
table
guys
2,
paid
table
for,
2,
others
move
that we
to
paid
table
for.
3, to
but
table 3, we'll move to
those
table
are some
1.
immediate things we can do to make some improvements.
They're
I didn't know you were with them, but they're great.
And
They
the
really
cost
are.
of doing any construction,
Oh, I know.
much less keep it
Well,
alive.
everything you touch at New Hanover, something else.
Phenomenal.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
You hadn't moved yet, have you?
Oh, yeah.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Julie?
Only y'all moved.
One of the questions, one of the things I put in my question I didn't hear an answer to was the isolation.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't hear.
so, he was asking about the isolation, so
Oh.
seclusion. So, seclusion rooms are not used
That
anymore.
I know.
Right. So seclusion in and of itself is only for serious emergency situations, not to be used for routine use at all. So if there's a serious emergency situation that requires the separation of, and if it's too dangerous, so we've had some situations where we serve every kid.
This is my favorite table.
And even kids that qualify for residential placement, when a parent says no thank you, we serve every kid. And sometimes it's not
We're going to begin
conducive to
now.
have them with anybody, but that is not a routine use. In the past, we have had some folks that used it routinely and should not and don't anymore. And so the numbers are really more representative now of crisis situations.
And I would imagine only older children at that point.
No,
Really?
it's the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, it really is.
Because the younger they are, you put them in isolation. I know that they're creating problems and trauma around them, but
Yeah.
when we put them in isolation, we are just amplifying their trauma
Yeah.
so much.
And it's only when that, and also only under the, we're following guidance from Board Certified Behavior Analyst, BCBA, and we contract and we utilize the services of the Center for Pediatric Behavior Health, because that's a moment where this is no longer an education issue, this is a clinical therapeutic issue.
Sure, absolutely.
And we don't need to pretend that we know how to handle it.
Which is, I guess, why I would say when Ms. Crable said that the SROs are not really acting as police officers but relationship experts, then I would say, then why are we paying policemen to be relationship experts? Why don't we pay relationship experts who are trained? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
a good one.
That sounds like logic.
Right?
I mean, yeah.
So one of the most important, and I'll just let Miss Mason, and Miss Bernhardt, I was like, wait, where is she?
She sat right next to
She
you.
sat right, I thought it was still Mr. McManus.
It is.
Because they look so much alike.
Right. No peripheral vision here. I know. And I've earned it. I deserve it. The SROs, mainly in our elementary sites, they're not there for policing. They're there to protect kids from an outsider that's not supposed to be coming in.
Yes.
That's their main
And
role.
we
And they're
need that as
trained
well.
on teaching the new model of DARE, which, that's been, now it's an evidence-based model. Now it is. It's no longer creating drug use. No, it wasn't. Now it's evidence-based. But they're there to protect from violence that can come into the building, not for policing.
Also to build those relationships too, and to show police or deputies in a more positive role.
Yeah.
Well, that's why they pay for it, not why we pay for it. The police, if they want that access, then the police department should be paying for that
So
part.
we don't pay for all of it.
We don't pay for all of them. No. So we pay for the elementary ones. We write a safety grant every year to pay for the elementary SROs because we want that as a part of our community safety, and we see killer relationships all the time with our SROs are showing up at Special Olympics to support, and they're the biggest cheerleaders, mainly among that population. But for our middle and high schools, and especially our high schools, the sheriff's office pays for those. So we don't bear the entire cost of that.
I did see, I thought, 1.5 million or something in the budget for SROs.
So our part, so it depends on where it falls in the budget and whether those funds slid from the county or whether they're funds that we secured. So our funds that we secure are around $350,000 in general, because that covers the rest of what we need to cover elementaries.
Thank you.
And I'm just going on memory.
So it's 348,500. Don't.
Right.
We're sending an email.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like I got invited
Remember,
to
this
a
is being
quiz and I didn't know what.
recorded,
I know.
Or to prepare for.
Right.
I love listening.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, I've had more stressful situations. I'm okay. Let's keep going.
You're doing great.
So Julie, you know that I have a special ed child. And so I hear you say about giving people the option of moving schools, but it's the kid who got bullied who gets that option, not in other words, we don't move the bullier. We tell the kid who got bullied.
Not necessarily.
It seems like more often than not that's the case.
So in situations where there is, so it can happen that way. It can. We're going to offer no matter what when a situation has been serious enough, because sometimes it's about being back in that building, whether the same people are there or not. So we have to remember there might be a trauma effect there. But for students who have engaged in substantiated bullying and it reaches the level that the student code of conduct says that this needs to be a removal from this environment, then we do that. And we also track, which we try not to miss any of these, but try to track, and we remind parents, let us know if there's a transition from 5th to 6th grade or 8th grade to 9th grade, and you're going to be going back to a place where you had a previous classmate or peer that where bullying was substantiated, then we need to look at another transfer option. So it's not a required transfer, it's a transfer option, but some other students have a required transfer. Disciplinary assignment. Sorry, I took over.
I mean, you're doing great. You're doing fantastic.
I think we went around.
I didn't even
You
know the
had
question. I
another
was
Are we back? Are we back going around?
Yeah.
We got 9 minutes. I was just looking, I'm going to jump on what we kind of already covered. One of the things when we talk about reporting, Ethic 360, there's concerns there because it is overseen by Title IX. Just putting that out there. Reporting isn't always put in there. Let me just clarify. One of the things I think we need to do, and I tell everybody that I know in the school system, whoever they are, you have to document. Phone calls are easy. Coming to the office are easy. But when you have a problem and you want to follow up, you cannot do that unless you have it in writing. And my case that I want to just tell you about that was documented. We had a child being taunted because she was not vaccinated. So this was, I don't know how long ago, 2 years ago. So I had advised the parent, are you documenting? We did. That teacher ended up being removed. So that's a process that we ourselves can protect ourselves, and also if the school has it in place, it doesn't have to come to us, right? So if that's something we can think about, it's an easy process, but you get into a habit of just doing verbal, then there is nothing that you can document to help yourself too, whether you're a principal or a teacher, right? It all should be. So that documentation gave us a really solid evidential case.
And do you know about the Speak Up, Say Something Act too, as well as the Ethics 3? Okay, I want to make you aware of that, because that is something that, from feedback from principals, that our students do use, which I value, a way for students to be able to communicate to us about what's going on with concerns. So
and then is it documented? That's kind of the question.
It is, and we can run reports to show how many came from, and they're all. Let me back up. About 3 or 4 years ago, right when I moved into this role, it was really obvious to us that we didn't have a way for folks to tell us things anonymously if they felt like they needed to. And that wasn't going to give us all the information we needed. If it's anonymous, we ignore it. That cannot be our plan ever. And so in creating Ethics 360, we work with the developers. I was in on that original work. We worked with the developers. It was mainly a human resources system, but we built it to give us access to recorded. We can't go in and delete reports. Recorded, verified, date stamped, and they can be anonymous, and there's a way to communicate back and forth with the reporter in the system, which was really important. Otherwise, because I've seen reports that are anonymous, and I can respond back and say, I need more information on this. And it's like, oh, okay, here's a person's name. That's very helpful, and I still don't know who the person is that reported it. That's great. I don't need to know. But having, and because that system is there, we use that to re-document all of our substantiated bullying cases, because they don't all necessarily go into Power School. And the victim and the offender can be kind of mixed up in a bullying investigation. So we log them all in Ethics 360. Well, then we want to make sure, because we can run those reports, because it isn't editable. The data that goes in, we don't edit.
I've done one.
Yeah.
As an outsider. And it got a no, and then there was no follow-up. It was, there's your answer. So that, I'm looking at it from the outside.
Right, sometimes I have to push back. Sometimes I have to push back. Yes, and say something. I got one today. Kids are using them over the summer.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
One of these really simple fixes, I would think, is when we have nonprofits who are willing to do things for kids to get ready for school, you know, get your supplies for the beginning of the year, like now. The date we give the nonprofits is based on the traditional calendar, which means our restart kids miss it all. So there are poorest kids, our Title I kids, some of our Title I kids, and even if something is done at the school separate, it's done after you would already have bought stuff. It's done at back to school night. So we're putting a burden on families that we don't need to by just that. I mean, I don't think that any nonprofit would have really cared whether they did it next week or 3 weeks ago.
I don't know that they ask us for a date. They usually tell us when it's happening.
Well, it's.
I mean, we can offer feedback, but I've never been asked what date should be used.
I know, depending on the school, there are some schools that do their own supply buying. My boys used to go to Winter Park, and every year they're like, here's the supply list. If you can get it, you can get it, but otherwise we're providing it. And so I do know that some of the schools do that separately, but I definitely get what you're saying, like making sure that we're including all of our kids and making sure if we wanted to reach out to, you know, previous donors earlier, and just say, hey, we have kids in this school. They might need some supplies. Would you be willing to donate something? So reaching out earlier.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
That's all.
Very good.
I mean, as I said, I think that's a simple one. It's just a matter of communicating to the right people.
I had a question about the ESSER funds. Weren't they used to bring on a lot of therapists, a lot of counselors? So, and Ms. Manna said that those funds are gone now. So is that just flipped over to the county?
We've reached out to the county to try to supplement some of those. Dr. Barnes over there has actually worked with a lot of the folks to try to, shift them to a different school or find another.
Okay, so every school does not have a therapist? I
No, they do.
Physical
No, like a school-based mental health therapist.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't want me to jump
go ahead,
in.
jump in.
Sorry, I mean, sorry. So
My idea.
every school has access to school-based mental health therapists, and we use those from county staff. So that's Health and Human Services staff that work in the same building as Public Health and DSS. So their caseloads can fluctuate so that if we have a stronger caseload at one school and lesser caseload at another, they can move over. But we can't just assign school-based mental health. It's still based on its mental health service that the parent has to consent to. And so there's sometimes a barrier, a trust factor there. But in our high schools, our traditional high schools, we don't have county school-based mental health therapists. We have a full health clinic through Coastal Horizons. They're called WAC clinics, Wilmington Health Access for Teens. And we have therapists in those buildings along with nurse practitioner and all that.
And that was before ESSER?
We did have that, and none of those have been funded by ESSER.
Right.
The mental health therapists haven't either. What we funded through student support, which is my division from ESSER, were additional social workers, additional school counselors, our social emotional learning coaches, folks like that. We didn't fund any through school-based mental health, and we haven't reduced.
Okay, so in other words, you're able to handle that with a budget without ESSER funds?
Yes.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Barnum, that we asked them to say, are we able to keep up with the load that we need that we're seeing the response from our students? And the answer is yes. We are able to respond to the needs based on the students and the engagement in the process.
And the level of consent.
Yes.
Yeah, now it doesn't mean that answers every challenging behavior need, but who are we to say that every challenging behavior is about a mental health issue? We have the responsibility to instruct before we call a kid as having a disorder or a disability. We need to teach. So that's why our behavior process is instructive.
You mean kids can just be bad and not be mentally ill?
Right?
Well,
Novel.
hold on. I think we sometimes we try to make a very distinct break between those two, and they don't exist.
You have
does
a
not
1
exist.
minute warning,
If there are
1
behavioral
minute
problems, it
warning.
is a mental health issue. That does not mean they are diseased or they have a problem, but they have a behavioral problem, which is mental health. According to the American Schools Mental Health Report Card, that gives ideas for how many school counselors, how many social workers, and how many psychologists you should have per student. I see that we have done better in the last several years, but we're still way behind. In fact, all of North Carolina is way behind, but that's another story.
Right.
But still, we're behind.
We are.
And so what are we doing to catch up?
So within, can I answer this again?
22 seconds, go.
I'm not taking any notes anymore. Within everything is based on the tax base, everything. And it's all based on the contribution that the state provides, because all of our counselor, social worker, and most of our school psychology funds come through state funds, not federal funds.
This concludes round 3.
We're not funded enough. We do better than the majority of counties across the state because we have a local funding. Our local funding and our board county commissioners and our board have determined that this much contribution goes into funding this locally for us to be better than the rest around us, but we're not where we need to be based on association ratios or with school nursing. But we have a school nurse assigned to every school. But we're not where the ratio
All right,
would be.
folks,
School
if you can
psychologists
start
unheard
wrapping
of.
it up, we need to
So
get the
it's all about the
second
tax
group
base.
seated.
Well,
You can
So,
start
and
wrapping
that's
it up.
reaching out to the
We need
state
get
too,
the
and I'll
second
just
group
let you know that's
seated. Thank you.
on one of my topics to discuss legislative agenda of student allotment, because ratios are very outdated to get what we need and to be able to for us to communicate
We're
to
gonna
the
switch off
state.
now.
Here's the
That's the
needs
long
report.
game, right there.
Yeah,
That's the
so
long game.
that is on the horizon too. It's just curious. And you
met
that's not
an
a short answer.
But my comment for all of you would be that we are taking our money and investing in SROs. So, you know, somewhere, I see a disproportionate amount of money going to the reactionary and less money from the precautionary.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say that defensively, we don't ever want to be in a situation that we say, oh shoot, we should have been reactionary too. Like, and so, and I agree, we also need to look into the input too. So I'm not disagreeing with you here, but I'm trying to capture notes. Chicken before the cart, right? I don't want to say I should have done what you done. I agree with both of what you're saying. So we're in this and we're going out to the long game, which in my opinion is not.
Board members, if you could wrap it up, please. We need to see the next group.
That's not quick
now
answer for you.
6 o'clock.
But I'm just letting you know that it is something that is.
Board members, please wrap it up.
I worked with a school way back in the first SOR.
Because you can, the state can fight the federal.
My kids are, my older kids are in their 30s.
So breakdown of what, like,
We
probably
found
the simpler question.
that-
Is there a breakdown of what you can put on this side and say, this is state, but can we get it from federal?
So, and specifically because of your interest in EC and special ed, so the federal guidelines that govern all of our IEPs by DEA. So in the same law, the same regulations that tell us that the IEP's got to do all these things, and we got related services and all this, and evidence base, and also puts all the due process rights of the families and parental rights. And if we know
to all the participants for coming
they got to
out.
fix and whatever.
Session
That
2
same
participants
law,
may
that
come to
same
your
regulation
tables, please.
says
Session 2
that Congress
participants may come to
will
your
commit
tables.
40% of what it
To
takes
your
to
table.
fund IDEA.
This
The
is
state
table
should pick
1.
up the rest. Do you know how much Congress funds? Yeah, right. 15% historically. That's all we get. That's all we get. So that's a federal lobbying issue, and I have to sign every year that I won't lobby.
So that, well, and then, so then I say,
Because this is
so
what I do.
federal, why can't we argue with them that you are understaffed with IEP services?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we're onto something. At least I am.
I have a.
Are we starting a whole new group?
Thank you. I have to move to another chamber.
Very well, very well.
I have a, if you want to email me, I have a book, because I did a summit in DC, a special ed legislative summit.
This is the kind of basic.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, like smart goals? Yes, they do. Yeah, generally, I mean, we do, it's a good goal to be smart, because they need to be strategic, measurable, attainable.
Yes, right.
Research-based.
Session 1 participants.
Yes.
If you would like to have a seat in the audience, please move over. We can begin session 2. We love people like you anyway, though.
Right.
You care about it, we care about it. This is our future.
It is?
Yes.
Do you have a child in the school system? I have two.
What schools?
Noble.
Noble. 2 middle schools. Lucky you. What about you, man?
Do you have a child in the school?
I do not know. I'm going to go on to BCA.
Okay. Hey there,
How are
Paul.
you?
Nice to see you again. Yeah.
Thank you for doing
And your name is?
I'm Jamie Washam.
Zany? Okay, love the name.
You're listening?
And your name?
Tom.
Tom. I know you. Yes, okay.
I saw your quarters
I know I know you, and the rest we know.
Now I know your face.
What's your name? Stephanie, nice to meet you. And Stephanie, so we got Kate and Stephanie everywhere now. Sarah, and I know you, yes.
Oh, it's Paul.
How are you?
This is the Stephanie caucus, yes.
Apparently.
Your name's not Stephanie, you can go to table 2.
Then everybody leaves.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Because we're at academic performance. Okay. We got a full table.
Yeah, this is the fullest.
Nice.
Has the time started?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Sal Cardella. I am the new Hanover County Schools Chief Communications Officer. And on behalf of the new Hanover County School Board, welcome and thank you for your interest in tonight's roundtable discussion on the district's strategic plan. You are here tonight because the Board of Education cares about your ideas and your concerns, and they do want to hear from you. The roundtable format will give you the opportunity to provide feedback about a specific goal from our current strategic plan. Of more than the 150 stakeholders who signed up to take part in tonight's discussion, 60 were randomly selected to participate. Those 60 have been placed in 6 separate groups of 10, one group per strategic goal. This is session 2, so this is the last 3. To facilitate the best possible dialogue and to make sure you, our community, feel heard, we will hold the back-to-back sessions. Once again, this is session 2. So please make sure you're at the right session. The first group of 30 will talk about, or have talked about, this is now in the past, they talked about goals 2, 3, and 6, which are student safety, supportive teacher and staff environment, and community partnerships. This session will cover goals 1, 4, and 5, which are academic performance, equity, diversity and inclusion, and family engagement. During the sign-up process, the board asked you to rank the strategic goals according to your interest, and they've done their best to place you at a table that aligns with what you care most about. Though we hope you understand that was not always possible. Please know, regardless of where you're seated, your presence and your input are incredibly important to us. For the duration of the session, you will stay at your assigned table. The board members will rotate from table to table every 15 minutes to ensure you have the chance to speak with all of them. The 15-minute time limit will be made visible on the screens here, so you can see those on the 3 screens, and there will be given a 1-minute warning. And then once that 15-minute ends, the board members, it's going to be up to them to get up and move. Probably from table 1, we'll move to 2, table 2 to 3, and 3 to 1. The discussion at each of these tables is being recorded and will be available on the NHCS YouTube channel. The event is also being live streamed, though only one discussion will be featured during the live stream. But then again, they will all be available afterwards on our YouTube channel. Please note that board members will not be at liberty to discuss or comment on anything associated with the book stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, as it is still undergoing review. Okay? So it's still ongoing review on that. You are welcome to email them, though, directly if you would like to share your opinion on the issue or attend the board hearing that will take place right here on September 1st at 9 a.m. That will also be live streamed. Remember, this is a dialogue format and to be respectful to everyone. Please check the lists on the screen. Ensure you're at the assigned table. Place your phones on silent, and thank you again for being here tonight. Right now, we're going to have this also read in Spanish.
Buenas tardes. En nombre de la Junta Educativa del Condado de New Hanover, les damos la bienvenida y les damos gracias por el interés en la mesa redonda y en la discusión que se va a tener esta noche sobre el plan estratégico del distrito. Ustedes están aquí esta noche porque la Junta Educativa está interesada en escuchar sus ideas y sus comentarios y quieren escuchar sobre ustedes y las ideas que tengan. El formato de mesa redonda les va a dar la oportunidad de proveer retroalimentación sobre las metas específicas de nuestro plan estratégico actual. Los invitamos para que participen la próxima vez que tengamos esta oportunidad, porque van a haber intérpretes y personas que van a poder ayudarles para expresar sus opiniones y preocupaciones. Gracias.
All right, thank you very much, and as soon as we're ready, we will start the clock. All right, we're ready. Thank you.
Do you want to go around the table, or is anybody, so everybody gets a chance to ask? You get about a minute and a half, so if everybody wants to talk, so I hate to do that.
But remember, there'll be 2 other groups coming through, so even if you don't get your question answered by this group, our experts are here to help also. So. Who would like to start?
Anybody have a burning question they just got to know the answer to? How about you, Stephanie?
I really don't have any burning questions, but I think one of my main concerns that wasn't specifically addressed in the objectives and the plan is teacher retention. I've seen it personally. We have teachers in the family in New Hanover County, longtime teachers, but I have a kid in elementary school, and there are certain teachers and resources who won't be returning, after last year. That's concerning. And, we have friends whose kids are in middle and high school, and they had courses where they didn't have teachers last year. Like, they didn't have a full-time teacher, and that just boggles my mind. So, especially with, I have 2 children, one of which needs no assistance in the classroom and is, everything comes super easy to him, and another one who needs a lot of help.
I had one of each as
And
well.
and for the one, my heart breaks for the one who needs a lot of help, to think like I wouldn't want to have to pull him out of the public school system because I didn't feel like the resources were there. And we had a fabulous year last year, and I just, wanted to see with the teacher retention issue specifically if that is something that is being addressed at the broad level.
Anyone want to take that from staff? Because, I know we did have, what was our last table with Dr. Barnes?
Yeah,
that was
the
teacher, but this
supportive
academic.
environment for teachers.
So, it does apply, of course, because, academics are what it's all about.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. No,
You're the academic officer.
Well, no, I just want to add in and then go, but some of the things that we're doing as a district is that we, our county commissioners have been very generous and have given us money that we can do a higher supplement than a lot of the counties in the state. We have done some teacher surveys to find out what kinds of things that they need, because they don't just need money, the intrinsic things that they just need, better professional development, more, guidance from their principal or from their professional learning groups, like their peers. So we're doing some of those kinds of things as well. And then we are offering different bonuses to the high needs schools with some grants that Dr. Faison and Dr. Faust have been able to secure. The low performing schools, so those teachers and principals are being recognized that they, I don't want to call it combat pay, but it's hard. It's a little bit of incentive to stay there and getting more. So add into that.
I would just say, it's an issue across our nation, as you know.
Yeah.
And we are extremely fortunate because our county commissioners have made our supplement almost the highest. It was the highest, but people always try to be the highest, so they'll add another $1 or $2 to it. And what I would say to you is, it's about respect in and out of the school building. So, our principals work really hard to give teachers the autonomy and the respect that they deserve in that school building. We need to make sure everybody does that. Teachers should be respected across our community. That helps us as well. So there's things that we can do as just community members to make sure our teachers feel valued. So I would throw that in.
I would just say, coming through COVID, a lot of stuff suffered. And the teaching profession definitely suffered, just like the nursing profession. It's going to take a little bit of time to build that back up, and we need a pipeline. And, as long as we have the support financially, and every year that's a challenge. That's one reason the task force, we're talking to them, because, we have a big endowment that we're hoping, helps us out. Quite honestly, that's one of the reasons it was established, or as a byproduct of the sale of the hospital. And I think some stuff are moving on that, especially when it comes to teacher pay and teacher I don't know what the word is, but I know
Yeah.
supplementing
Yeah.
teachers
Mhm. Teacher
and
supplements.
supporting them, because it's not just about supporting them in the classroom, it's like supporting them when it comes to maybe housing and, there's things that the school district can't control, Paul
And
probably knows a
listening
little
to
bit
them.
about this because, city and county government control a lot of the stuff that we can't control, inflation, housing costs and all that stuff. I mean, if we can do stuff to help them, we're gonna probably work really hard to do that.
But I would like to set your mind at ease that we heard at the other table over there that we have a 16% turnover rate, which is about national average.
Okay.
And about half of those are leaving the profession to do something else. And about half of those are leaving because they're aging out. We had a lot of baby boomer teachers, and so now they're retiring.
Ms. Stackhouse.
Okay.
No, I have a comment.
Okay.
Because no matter how much you do to retain the teacher, if Johnny can't read, Johnny can't read. And that's what I'm concerned about. Johnny can't read. Johnny can't count. Johnny gets a job at McDonald's and he can't even count your change. And he's going to a school that my tax dollars are paying for. So, yeah, I want to keep the teachers. I want the teachers to have all the support they need to teach Johnny to read and count. I want them to get respect in school. But Johnny can't read, and I don't know what the answer is. Johnny can't read. And if you can't read, you don't have a quality in your life, any quality in your life.
Yeah,
So that-
I was going to throw out, we've talked as a board about having, they used to have, I'm old, I used to be a principal, teacher, and they used to have gateways where if you didn't pass through, if you couldn't read in third grade, you stayed in third grade. So, and I'm not saying retention is the answer to everything, because it's not the answer to everything. But we've kind of made the challenge to the superintendent and to the senior staff to say that we need to increase the number of students that can read, that can pass third grade. I mean, yes, I'm an elementary guy. I was an elementary principal. But third grade, if they can't read by third grade, there have been studies done that show that there's a downward slope after that. Yes, we can catch them up. But we need, that third grade is so huge.
And the thing is, since the late 60s, early 70s, we have put dollar after dollar after dollar in getting kids ready with Head Start, all these other programs, and the kids still can't read. So, I don't know, we're never gonna meet this goal if we don't do something different. What we've been doing it's the same thing over and over, and we're not getting no different.
I was just going to say one thing that they did at Porter's Neck that you guys were a part of was the Leader in Me, which I thought was really creative because it got the kids directly involved in their own education. And I think if you create that spark, I think you create much more interest in that from the student's perspective.
Great, but if you're going to have a program that's great, let it be available not just in Porter's Neck.
No, it was a pilot, but I think they're expanding.
So all I know is Johnny can't read, and Johnny is across the county.
But it wasn't just for Porter's Neck. We asked principals if they wanted it at their school, and it's a lot of work. And so some of our schools chose not to do it. You're correct when you're talking about individuals who aren't reading on grade level. That's just not a New Hanover issue, that's nationwide. I was watching on the Today Show last week, and I was talking to the senior leadership team. 51,000 teachers left the profession this year on the national. So we do know that there's a downfall. However, reading is our focus. Math is our focus. And we have seen an increase in our proficiency skills and our levels at our school. It's not an overnight thing. And so we talk about it. We just adopted a new reading curriculum. Our teachers have been asking. They just finished letters training. They just finished the science of reading. All of that implementation. Last year was the year where they were going through it. They finished it. So this year we should start to see students at different levels. It does, again, I understand the urgency. They know how I am about urgency and making things urgent. But filling in the gaps, it does take a minute. And we're not giving up on students.
So
I would like to see part of the strategy focus a little bit more on the older grades. So I also have a nonprofit, and we deal with kids that have dyslexia and ADHD. And so a big piece that's missing is the conversation about dyslexia, about screening, and that's why Johnny can't read. Do we have the right curriculum? And we, like he said, we are training our teachers with letters. And you guys are making some great improvements for our younger grades, but what about the kids in high school? What about the kids in middle school? And those are the ones that are about to graduate and be at McDonald's, not being able to be in the workforce, which is part of the strategic plan. So that's why I'm here today, was to, I guess, challenge you guys a little bit more on the plan and the focus. And I've had teachers come to me for additional training for Orton Gillingham that are in high school. They're high school teachers, and their students can't read.
Yeah. And one of the things that is a struggle is because our state, when you get to the upper grades, it's like we don't teach reading anymore, which we still have to teach reading. And I will say, letters is supposed to be coming to the upper grades because it's changing the game. And that's what I was going to say to you. When you look at our kindergarten and our first grade data, it is amazing. Letters is really changing the way. It's not going to be a quick fix, right? But we have to make sure, and we can't wait to third grade. We have to make sure that in kindergarten, that the data we're seeing translates up to the first grade and keeps on going. What we are doing is we are working with teachers on providing quality curriculum. And the reason I say that is because what we're learning, what I'm sharing with the staff now is there's something called the mystery, the opportunity math. And what it says is, we all say Johnny can't read. Johnny is struggling with read. But what it says is, if you put in front of Johnny a teacher who has high expectations, Johnny's gonna grow a year. He's gonna close the gap a year just from that. If you put in front of Johnny grade level material, don't dumb it down for him. There's a time for that. You put in front of him, he's gonna grow another 7.3 months, and so forth. So we are working with our teachers. Our teachers are doing a lot of things, right? The first thing they said to us is, we need a different curriculum. They approved it, right? They have a quality curriculum now. It's not where we want to be because we want Johnny and everybody else reading at this moment in time. But you're going to see the trend changing. The data is moving. It's just going to take some time. I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's just going to take time.
I'm just saying, I'm just looking at these percentages that you want within the next 4 or 5 years.
Right, we set the bar high.
And I'm more than happy that you set the bar high, not just for the performance from the teachers in reference to their teaching, but then it also means it's a higher bar for the kids to reach. And I agree with you.
Exactly.
If you challenge Johnny, Johnny will meet your challenge. And I think that Dr. Faust said something that kind of ruffled some feathers a few months back, but I understood what he meant. Okay, I didn't quite like the way he said it either, but I understood what he was saying. If you don't challenge Johnny and put the bar up there, Johnny is not going to try to reach it. Yeah. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I think that maybe that's some of what has been going on for a while, because in my volunteering, I stopped, but I used to volunteer with after-school program and at school, and it was like they were more truly like they were teaching the test. And when the kids came to the after-school program, they very
1 minute warning. You have the 1 minute warning.
Find something for them
And what
to
I
do.
would say to you guys is, well, on those things, volunteering and with in your organization, think about giving us your time. We don't have any money, right? We don't have the money. If you have something that you can help us be better, help us, right? And then we have reading programs, a reading buddy program. We need volunteers.
Is that the first grade program?
That's the first grade program.
And then the
We're
fourth grade
asking-
math?
The fourth grade math, that's even paid. So there are ways for you to get involved. You do not fix a school system by yourself. You just don't. You need people like you at the table.
Paul's got one last thing.
This
16
sort
seconds.
of, okay, talk really fast. This kind of goes, the biggest metric, this talks about metrics, the biggest metric, most public metric is the end grade, end of year test. And I think I've always been concerned that makes it.
Thank you all. Your time is up.
Some schools.
Your time is up.
Your time's not up. Our
Okay.
time is up, not yours. Keep going.
What I'll just leave this much is, I would like to see the school system, instead of focusing just on the end of year, end of grade, focus more on growth.
We know all about that.
What a school does in a
Good
year.
information is coming.
Good.
Board members, if you will move to
it's
your next
impossible
table,
for some
please. Table 1 will
schools
move to
to
table 2, table
get
2
where they
to
need to
table
be
3,
because the kids are
table
way
3
behind.
will move
And
to
we're
table
with you.
1.
Growth,
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
are
are
speaking
Ask
our
that
language.
again to the next group. Because, yeah, that is our
And you can ask them all questions. Thank you.
Because and then if you grow kids, eventually the proficiency will come.
Yeah, because the rising time.
Because if you keep going them, they're going to get there.
Right, and also, I mean, if you're a teacher and you're in this school that's 2 years, your students are way behind, it's impossible for you to catch up, virtually impossible. And then at the end of the year, what do we say? Oh, you're a failure. You may have grown that kid further than at the nice schools I went to, because the kids came in where they should be, and then for the schools that are good right now, they might not be as good as they could be because you have the kids with all the pluses in there. How are you? Good to see you.
You got the experts, so you don't really need us.
And begin.
I'm staying close to Bradford, so if they shoot and they get
Yeah.
big.
This one's easy, and it's our favorite topic, and it's our number one topic. But just since they're recording, I know you may have said it last time, but just say your name before you ask a question or make a comment so that it's people who are listening will know who said what. And we got 15 minutes, so ask or discuss away. We're here. Who wants to start?
Well, because Stephanie said I needed to ask you this question that I had asked them, I'll ask you. The biggest...
And your name is?
Paul Lawler. So the biggest... I failed that in school too. Saying your name. The biggest metric we all get is the end of year, end of grade thing, which in some schools is great, but every year. But then some schools always show up at the wrong end of that. And if you're the school or the teacher with, that gets that grade, how do you promote teacher morale if you've got a testing regime or a metric regime that says, it's virtually going to say you failed? How do you keep that teacher inspired if the testing is going to come back and say that? It's a question asked, which apparently you all are working on, is shifting and focusing more on growth, so you have a better idea what happened that year. So I'm not getting blamed for, the student coming in behind, but I can show in that year, maybe I didn't get them up to where we want them, but, I can show I advanced them. And then at the, schools, I went to, what the kind of schools you wanted to go to, have the plus stuff in there.
So what's the question?
The question is, can you move to growth and make that the real measure instead of focusing on the end of the year and grade things?
So one of the things that we talked about just last week, 2 weeks ago maybe, with our principals is high growth or exceeding growth. And
what was the second?
Exceeding growth. So with the state, there's they measure growth. So growth is 20%, and then the proficiency is 80%. However, if you exceed growth, that takes care of all the others. And so the state will say you exceed, you meet growth, or you do not meet growth. And the charge this year this coming year is for all our principals to exceed growth. Because if you're at a low performing school, you're no longer deemed low performing if you exceed growth. The state wipes it away. And so it's not necessarily counting, and what will happen is what Dr. Faison was saying, you will eventually catch them up. So I'll exceed this year, exceed this year, exceed this year.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually they're going to be on grade level, because there's a metrics in there that talks about what's succeeding. And we do look at our kindergarten. That's how she's able to talk about what kindergarten and first grade are doing, the celebratory things, because there's not a test that actually measures theirs. But there is there's a state or there's a
not a test though, it's an assessment that we do.
Assessment that we use, and so we have this year we have outpaced the state with reading, and I want to say we've gotten up to the national. We were outperforming a lot, and so those are the great parts. But as we said, it will take a minute.
Of course, the Star News every now and then will say the worst schools, and it's the same 5 schools they always report, right?
I've got something for them.
And don't believe everything you read in the media.
No, but my point is, one of the things you're going to face is whether you need to redistrict. And how do you say to a parent, I want to send your student to the school that the Star News reports every year is bad?
Well,
but if with some of the growth measures, you can have a better argument.
Well, it's what everyone has to understand is highly effective teachers, leaders is what everyone wants. That's it, highly effective.
Yes.
And it doesn't even matter where you are, as long as they're highly effective. And so what happens is when you don't have the highly effective, and then it attaches that not met growth coupled with low performing. And so then it's deemed an ineffective school.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have to do, and that's why I keep saying exceed growth, exceed growth. If you exceed growth, it gets rid of that stigma, because you can be at a posh area, but you aren't meeting growth. And so that means that the kids come there, technically they could take the test on the day they would do well.
Or they should be doing 120% because they've got all the advantages.
So they need to exceed what they're getting. So those are the conversations that we really and truly will be having pretty soon. Just give us about a month, and we'll be talking a little more about that.
A month, okay. We'll be back in 30 days.
Okay, please do.
Next person?
You want his cell number?
Yeah, write that on your calendar.
My name is Stephanie, and I have 2 kids in the school system. I will say that we had a first grader last year and saw that reading curriculum. Like, my first grader has learning issues, and like that was one of the things that I was the most nervous about. Would he be able to catch on to reading, and was that going to be a struggle for him? And he reads beautifully.
Yes.
And for a rising second grader, like that program definitely works.
And you're talking about
the following speeds.
That's what I was going to say. Foundations, integrity, and geos. And that's the one piece. Right. Those are the 3 pieces that we didn't change with this new curriculum.
Right.
Right. The teacher said, don't change that.
That is
fabulous. And that is definitely fabulous. You're right.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that, because the teachers love it as well, and the data says it's doing what it needs to do.
Yep.
But if that's what they've been using all along, why is it by the time they get in the 3rd grade?
We haven't been
using it all.
We've had, I think we got geos last year, the year before last, and integrity maybe the year. So it is not. And then letters. Keep in mind, she's also seeing the effect of letters training. That training that the state is doing in some of the other states across the nation. The teachers just completed that training this year. We're one of the first cohorts across the state. So we're really getting ready to see, I hope, some really effects of that.
Well, I think we need to go to the universities and ask them, what are they teaching the teachers?
I've done that. Just did it 2 months ago.
From going to the university, paying them money, and get to the job, and then you have to train them to do what they already went to school to do.
We met with the professor for reading at UNCW about 2 or 3 months ago, and we're trying to partner with her because we're on the same page as you, because we need them to come out knowing the things we already have.
Yes,
so on the
ma'am.
same page.
Yeah.
It just takes time. It really takes time. I know you don't want to keep hearing that.
No, when I left college after 4 years in 1971, I stepped out ready to do what they had trained me to do. So I'm trying to figure out, excuse me, what the hell happened?
And Ms. Stackhouse, you're right. You know, I had interns for years, and they would come to me, and they would know absolutely nothing about how to do the job. I'm like, what are they teaching these kids? And you'd have to teach them everything before they could actually do any kind of intern work. So you are correct. But we are so committed to improving academic achievement. We are 100% in agreement on
They
that.
are on me, trust me.
Yeah.
They are on.
I'm just trying to understand.
And it's working.
Because, you know, kids were graduating from high school. They were able to get, well, economy and everything was different then, and jobs were out there, different kind of jobs and whatever. But they were graduating from high school. The graduation rate wasn't like it is now. You know, and some of the stuff that I think they're doing now at the, what is it, CTEC? They had it in the schools back in, you know, the 70s, 60s, 70s. I don't know why they dropped it. Because everybody is not four-year college material.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think she had a question right here.
Donna Gargett. We had spoke at the last 15 minutes a little bit about literacy and my background. I also have a nonprofit besides the two kids enrolled in Noble, but my nonprofit talks about dyslexia and literacy, and I've been involved in advocating for literacy since 2016. So part of the reason we have letters is advocates like me that helped push to get letters, and I would really like to see the school explain it a little bit more to parents, you know, what letters is, and really letters is the foundation, but it doesn't give the teachers the how-to, and teaching Orton Gillingham gives the teachers the how-to implement it into the classroom. So I know you're building upon, and it's going to take time, but the next step, obviously, yes, you guys have the curriculum. My question was, with your strategic plan, another area that is missing is concentrating on the older students that don't have that opportunity to get the right curriculum, that are falling through the cracks. The other thing that's missing is the understanding of some of, you know, there is some basic screening tools that you guys are using, but no one really understands where dyslexia falls in that. So with DIBELS, with some of the MCAT, you can see it in there only if you're trained to really understand dyslexia. And dyslexia affects 1 in 5 students, so that's a big chunk of students. And that's why, you know, she talked about Johnny not being able to read. We have to talk about dyslexia, and no one's talking about dyslexia.
I'm talking about it. I'm talking about, I have that label.
I do too.
I don't accept it, but I have that label, and I notice certain patterns, and I'm talking to them constantly about it because
She does.
I do. Yeah, I want more.
Yeah. And we didn't, when I say the new curriculum, and it has, we have one for middle school as well. And the middle school curriculum has a wealth of things to scaffold. And does it have something for dyslexia? I would have to go back and look. But I would tell you, we lean on our EC teachers for
But
that.
so that's the other part that's missing with parents in the struggle is, you know, going through the hoops to qualify for an IEP, to get the proper testing. There's so many kids that aren't diagnosed with it. And so parents are, they're assuming the school is going to come to them and say, Johnny's having trouble. And that's not always happening. And they don't understand why their child is struggling.
We have the, you know about the NCSS process, so we have a so we have a full process.
But that is a long process
It
for
is a long
students
process.
to, again, go through these hoops where they're sitting in a class when really they need to get to the replacement curriculum and not go through the tier system.
We have to make sure we don't just label a child that doesn't need to be labeled.
So
I mean,
But we need to screen them because they are
that's
already have that challenge.
So there are a couple things through the federal. So if we over-identify students, we get a sanction. So that's why we have to have the NTSS. And anytime that a parent is wanting their child tested, all they have to do is send a letter an email to say, I want you to test my child. And
But
we
are
have
we
to start it.
telling parents how to do that? That is what I'm saying.
No.
The disconnect and where
I don't know
parents
anything
are.
about this. I have my child just finished kindergarten, and all of this.
Can you speak
is,
up?
Sorry, Sarah Williams. I didn't mean to piggyback off you.
No,
but,
that's perfect.
Literally everything you're saying, I've never heard.
Exactly.
I just have my daughter just finished kindergarten. I feel like, and I don't know, she's my oldest, so I don't know if this is just an isolated incident with this teacher or if this is like great. It's hard for me to speak to it, but I have never heard of anything. I would love, because I'm taking my daughter to the pediatrician to get the referral to the child psychiatrist to get tested because no one shared any of this information with me.
Well, here's my card, and
Thanks.
maybe the school will help you.
You know, and when I brought up questions to this teacher, oh no, she's fine, and
So what made you think that, what has you going to that? Because kindergarten, we like to see kids progress, right?
and she progressed,
okay.
but
I mean,
it runs in the, we have family members that have it, and have other like learning disabilities, and so that was one, but just, she frequently gets a lot of the letters confused, and they're the same letters, and they're the, you know, P and D, G, like very
D and B.
repeatedly, and the teacher
You have
would
the
note
1
it,
minute
but when I brought it up,
warning,
it
1
was,
minute warning.
It was, oh no, that's fine, she's fine, and she might be. It
Right.
might just be she's in kindergarten, but
Yeah.
it was very much brushed, and there was never sort of like, well, if you're concerned, we can.
because, and I'm just going to say, speak for the teachers, and you're talking kindergarten, and not to say, you want to do before you label a child.
Of course.
You know, you want to do so many things.
Of course.
And we would put her through, we would start with the NHCS process, and when you're talking kindergarten, most likely your child is just going to progress in first grade and be fine.
100%.
So we wouldn't have those conversations because it's not abnormal.
Right, but I just feel like if I'm broaching the subject, there should at least be sort of like, well, if
Yeah,
this
that's a good
continues,
point.
this
Yeah.
could be
Well, it's
something
confusing
you
for the
talk
child.
about.
Yeah.
Speaking personally, you know, you think, you know, I'm a dummy. There's something wrong with me, and so the
Thank you.
frustration
That
as a
concludes
child
round
should not
2
be
of
like your
session
peers
2.
as you're
Board members, if you will please move to your next
it's pretty
location.
hard, so
Thank you.
don't ignore it.
No, and it might just be she's in kindergarten and she's
And
just
the
like,
teacher
and I'm
probably
so,
doesn't want to pay. I mean, it is so many things, but we can definitely,
Well, no,
you can reach out and they'll give you the information. Because like
I think
Dr. Faust
that's
said,
just
you
like
could
more,
test.
it would have been helpful to, when it was broached, like, hey, this might be
Right.
something, if it continues or if you're concerned, this is your.
Yeah, I think it's,
Half
I would
hour.
say because your child is in
Table 1,
kindergarten,
please move to
she
table
felt
2,
like
table 2 to
it
3,
wasn't
and
that place. But it's not to say that you don't need the information. But that's what I would say.
The cool thing is a lot of the brilliant people in the world, they have this label too.
yeah.
So there's a trade-off.
Yeah, it's fine, either way.
I wouldn't change
We're all good
myself.
either way, like, it's not.
You dropped something.
Yes, ma'am. I'm carrying 2 ink pages in case one rolls out.
Very
Thank
out
you
of
all.
on.
And whether
All right.
I didn't.
I'm dyslexic, and I didn't have that label until I got to college.
That's all right.
I could have.
All right, awesome.
Last time he took forever to get
Well,
out.
he
usually does. He usually
And I've
does.
told the state legislative, you know, standing in front of the senator and explaining it's not about, that's not a negative thing to label our kids. It's an instruction manual for the teachers.
And if she's just confused because she's sick, then that's fine. Like,
Yeah, but there is, I mean, if you
15
go,
minutes is not
I have
easy,
a
like, to know
website
this. It's just
and
not.
we're on
15 minutes
Facebook,
is not long.
and I have a lot of
We're
things
gonna
about
do,
warning
we've
signs,
seen,
so
we've
even
seen
like,
some good progress.
and a lot of it is like
And so we're gonna do the same thing that we've been working on and with our new curriculum and making sure that our teachers
leading up to
have
this. So I'm so glad you're so
because they've asked for that. So we don't wanna do a whole bunch of different things, we're focusing on, we have an instructional framework, so we focus on that. I don't wanna take that time. Go ahead.
I know, right?
No, go ahead.
Just a brief introduction because we're new to the table. I'm Melissa Mason.
And I'm Josie Barnhart. So thank you guys for being
And so y'all have been having a good conversation, I'm sure, because people didn't want to leave. So we would love to join your conversation and
Ask
talk
the
about
question.
like concerns and questions and all the things.
Well, my question is, based on the strategic plan, you have some goals here in reference to where you want to go, where you want to be within a certain number of years. So I'm just asking, other than letters and the changing of the curriculum, what else is part of your process plan to meet these goals?
And could I just,
I'll jump in.
could I just sort of add on to that question? One of the things, boys aren't going to college anymore. And the UNC system is now 60% female, 40% male. And the Wall Street Journal and others predict that we're going to be 2/3, 1/3 in a few years. And that's going to mean all sorts of interesting changes. But I think it's for bad reasons that boys aren't going. Somehow they're not inspired, they're not keeping up. And so just as you're answering her question about what to do for the upper grades, what about getting the boys back in the game?
So I love these questions. Lobbing it to us easy, right? I'm teasing. But no, the first thing, whenever I came onto the board, one of the questions I asked was, what does it look like for our district to not have any priority schools, to have 0 schools that are failing, to make sure that we have the targeted intervention for these students? What does it look like? And then these two people just couldn't stop talking. They said, we got to do this and we got to do this. And I said, well, what does that look like? Does that look like grant funding? Does that look like state asks? What does that look like? And so we have successfully secured funding for 2 tutoring intervention programs for our priority schools for this coming year, as well as there was grant funding for CSI for 2 of our schools. And so there is some target funding focus going into that. And then with the expansion of the higher level, and I'm trying to be short so everyone has time, with the expansion of the higher level opportunities, the CTE program, to expand that by 40% is one of the goals. And so to have opportunities, and we know the more opportunities that we give kids, the more chances of success that they're going to see. And so what does that mean though? It means intentional early exposure. So not just in high school, but also in middle school, to have that vertical alignment and make sure that we have quality programs presented to our students and the opportunities. But then here's another question I asked them coming on. I said, how are we relaying that information to the parents? Because if I have a child who wants to be a mechanic, and I say, I don't know how to do that for you, hon. Like, I can help you with math because that's my thing, but what does that look like? What's the pathway set up? And so that is something very exciting that we're engaging in for the whole district, is to have an opportunity for students to take these interest quizzes for them. It's through Zello, that they can look and see, this is what I'm interested in, and here's the classes that are offered. So on a parent perspective, I can see, here's my 7th grader, this is what they're interested in, this is the classes that they can take, here's what New Hanover County has to offer. Some are at specialty site schools, and others are district-wide programs, but there is an exemption rule that we can track students. If there's a solo pathway at a school, they can request a transfer and be admitted into that program. So those are some instant jump off the answer. Those are my 2 answers right off the top of my head.
So New Hanover County had to learn to do this again because they used to have it in their program.
I would say we are making it better. It's always been there. I'm not going to be, that's where I'm at. We're making it better to make sure that the streamline process, the alignment process is there, and the communication piece is there for everything that we have to offer. And then the flip side of that, the implementation is making sure that the quality of the program itself, of the resources that we have in the room, the things that those children are being, it's not just outdated equipment, that they're really getting hands-on learning experience. So it's getting better. It's being more enhanced.
To the tutoring that she mentioned, it's actually focused, correct me if I'm wrong, on math. And it's solely focused on math. And so that addresses that strategy number 3 under academic performance. And the Zello program, I think, is going to be fantastic for our kids. It'll help them figure out where they're going. I have 2 boys at home, and you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, and right now they want to be YouTubers.
A gamer, yeah, okay.
YouTubers, no, not gamers, YouTubers, because YouTubers make all the money, but they have like so many other skills. They have skills in technology. One of my sons can edit videos really well. One of my other sons is really more math focused, and so I think that the Zello is going to really redirect all of our kids, boys and girls, on a pathway to get to where they need to be, whether that is college or not. We would prefer they would go to college because I think that it would benefit them for sure. But if that's not the path that they need to go on, then that's not the path they need to go on. But these programs that we have in place, I think, are going to really, really help. these for sure.
So what supports are in place to help those students meet the academic performance needs of those programs? Like, and I think we touched on this earlier, especially like one parent had never heard of NHCS, so how are we ensuring that the students and their parents aren't being dismissed when they're trying to meet the needs of these programs and curriculums? And if they're not all across the board in all schools, then how are we making sure that all students are made aware of these programs and how they can get access to that?
Are you gonna jump in?
Yeah, I was gonna say something, and it's ahead, I'm putting the horse ahead of the cart. We have talked about, just in the upcoming years for calendar, making sure, that there is a time for parent conferences. And in some districts where I've worked, it was like after and now I'm just kind of spitballing this one. After the 9 weeks, there was a day off or 2 days off, and one day was for the teachers to do their thing, and the next day was for parent conferences. Everything that all of you are talking about, and you were talking, is that our goal is to get parents into the school, to be able to talk about their own child and what we're actually doing. And if you're not seeing the progress that you need, but then it's oftentimes when it's like, well, I can make it at this time, I can make it at this time. It's like we want to be able to say, okay, and you can still do that, but at this time, this is designated for parent-teacher conferences, and it's an all-day thing where they're coming in. We'll just say like only an hour. I'm again making this up, but those are things that because that's a long process, and trying to get that to roll without any humps will be.
But see, just most parents work. The teacher's job is from 8:30 to 3:30, whatever time. The parent has a job that's from 8 to 5. But if the parent doesn't know that the teacher has a day October the 25th.
We communicate. It would be, when you do things like that, you normally stagger, because you don't start, the teacher wouldn't start like normally when Dr. Faust is talking about. The parents sign up for times. Because it's about accommodating.
Right.
So it's not that day where the teacher says I come in at 8 or I come in at 7.
Right.
So they accommodate. And we actually have something we're putting in place now that we want to make sure you understand. So like you don't know about those things. I wonder if you know, how do I get a parent conference? Right? We got to make sure that you know about those things, right? How do you get those things?
We had parent-teacher conference, and it was a 10-minute slot that we came in. She said everything's good. We asked some questions. She said nope, she's good. It's rushed because and it's not her fault. She's trying to fit.
Right. But that's why we would do the day.
Which
because
I
if
love.
you had a
I
whole
love that.
day, you have a whole day, and teachers have those hours, you get that time.
Yeah.
And I would say to you too, you can also request additional conferences where, hey, say to the teachers, I will tell you, just like you when you say to your teachers, I really want to know about this process. I've heard about this process, this NHCS process. They will explain that to you. One of the things that I would say to you as a kindergarten teacher, they're not going to, they want to, I'm not going to say fear, but give you this concern that there's an issue when there might not be an issue. I know you asked the question, so they should have told you anyway. But I think that is where I would go with a kindergarten teacher.
Right. And the conference, to be fair, like they're squeezing 20 parents in over 5 days in between like lunch and stuff like that. So I don't regret, that's totally understandable. That's not that's not their fault. That's just.
Well, the other thing you were talking about was the intervention. When we were looking at curriculum, one of the big things that I asked is where's the scaffolding? Because when you're discussing learning styles, you're discussing we have to accommodate for special needs students, we have to accommodate for multi-language learners, we have to accommodate for kids who are just behind, but they're in my class now. So how do I reteach that? Having those skills in place and not having a teacher say, I am so overwhelmed to make sure that I do all these things, but I have all these kids and I have all these needs, so how do I do that? Well, that means when we're buying things as resources and good stewards of our finances, we have to make sure that we're encompassing those things and that teachers have the and our high achieving learners, I think I've left them out, but with all those things encompassed and to understand that's what a well-rounded lesson
looks like. And when you have that mindset going into the teaching realm, going into the leadership realm of saying, this is what we need for success to look like, then we're supporting all students. And that's important to me. I'm passionate about that, but
I just want to say, because you weren't here, but it goes back to not teaching reading in the middle school. And what the middle school curriculum that we have, you can do so many adjustments. So if the kid can't get this, if the kid is on this level, there are so many things that you can just adjust it. So if I'm trying to teach this concept, I can do it this way. So there's so many scaffolds
That only
already
comes
put in
if
place.
we provide the teacher training, right?
Oh, we are. They have a full day of training. You remember we
And
just
I will
got
tell you,
these.
the hardest class and both my girls are dyslexic, I'm dyslexic. The hardest class is always science. And those teachers just assume that all these kids can read and they're tough on them. And I would say if you need to start with a subject, start there, please, because any other parent that has a child with a learning difference will tell you science is a tough class because there's so much reading already in that class, and those teachers don't have the training. That's where we need the assistance.
I know you have it. Because I'm sitting, my brain is working, right? So she's a note taker. So you make me think.
And I know you have to
what
start
kind of
somewhere.
training? No, but because honestly, our reading teachers are going to get a day full of training. Our math teachers are going to get it at the beginning, and our science teachers are going to get some. But it's going to be on science, right? So
Not on,
I need to
right.
exactly
The cross-collaboration.
exactly.
And
we
have-
do some of that,
and I do
but
have
that training would be beneficial for them as well.
And I do have some resources I can give you after to get teachers to come to about dyslexia. And some
Not
incentives to
not
get
even
them to
just
come.
science, though. I think that that's something across the board that our teachers need more support on, as far as working with our kids that are exceptional. I taught for 13 years with teachers that were amazing teachers with your typical kid, but then when they got an EC kid with a little bit of extra, it was hard for them. And I'm not saying that they're terrible teachers; they're excellent in the field that they're in. But to have that extra training, that extra encouragement, and these are the skills you can use, and this is how you can address this in a way that isn't demeaning to our kids, that is encouraging them and inspiring them to want to learn.
Right, because right now we're just giving accommodations when we could actually be using that as an opportunity to work on literacy at the same time as science. And then Johnny could do his job at McDonald's, like we were talking about earlier.
But it's a shame because here Johnny is 16, 18 years old. He has a job. You know, you get change. He can't count the money, even though the register tells him how much money to give you.
None of these kids can count change
None of
anymore.
them.
1 minute warning.
They don't keep money in their hands.
Yeah, it's all cards.
You know, and then you think, okay, he's 18 now. One day he's going to want to buy a car, buy a house, have a family, and he can't count. He can't read.
we're working on that.
Yeah. One thing that I would say that, to piggyback it on when you ask what strategies we're doing, when we look at our current data, which we can't share because it's embargoed, but we're very pleased with it. It's an understatement. We find a correlation to what we call strong PLCs, professional learning communities, and it goes back to, that collaborative piece. So that is one of the things that we really have worked on really hard last year, is really giving teachers that time to collaborate. And they do some collaboration, all the third grade teachers. And then sometimes they do third, fourth, and second. And then sometimes they do it across the subject area. So I would say to you, that is one of the things that we do that we really have seen too.
This has been a great table. End of the day. Thanks, guys.
That concludes session 2.
So everybody's going to be graduating with honors in what, 2 years?
Somewhere else.
I'm a fan of differentiation. I believe strongly that the more
Okay, 3
pathways we
years.
give, that we're going to see success, but it's going to look different for different
So that
kids.
stands
Success is
for
like.
C
And
stands
so,
for
but I'm excited for the opportunities that we're creating for our kids.
And that's going on what day?
What do you say? Oh, sorry.
Okay, so this is tomorrow, so from 8 to 10, enroll.
Also have our art show coming up.
4 season. I need to go to that because it's children's school.
Did you guys hear this? Can I?
Can you
Yes, I didn't hear. Can I
You
just
want to
tell
make an
them about this?
announcement?
Yes.
You want to talk? Come on up. You're our next contestant.
We need all of you to grab your neighbor, come out tomorrow, and come and see our curriculum. We've heard you. You want to see what we're teaching. We're going to have it wide open for you tomorrow. We are having curriculum, coffee, collaboration, and conversation. The 4 C's. We have it at 3 different times, 3 different locations. Starts tomorrow at 8:30. 8, sorry. Oh, okay, here we go. 8 to 10 at Rolling Grice, 12:30 to 2:30 at Ogden, Murray Middle at 5:30. And I will say to all the parents listening, the school that has the largest percentage of teachers, we have a donation from one of our fabulous community members, and they will receive a lunch to start the year. So bring your kids, come out and see the curriculum that we have in our schools. Tomorrow, we need you. And then Uncle Sam said, we need you.
All right, thank you. Have a great night. Please leave your seats at this time so we can start breaking down the room and putting it back together. You're more than welcome to hold your conversations elsewhere. Thank you.